When I first saw the house, I thought it was perfect. It stood quietly at the edge of a quiet neighborhood, surrounded by tall trees and endless silence. My wife, Emily, was glowing with excitement. She turned to me and said, "It feels alive, doesn't it?" I smiled. I didn't understand what she meant then. We moved in that weekend. For the first few days, everything felt peaceful. Laughter echoing through empty rooms, the smell of fresh paint, the warmth of new beginnings. But after a while, the silence started to feel strange. Sometimes I'd hear soft footsteps upstairs when I was alone. Doors creaked open even though the windows were shut. And every night, a faint knocking sound echoed from somewhere above our bedroom. One evening, while unpacking boxes upstairs, I noticed something unusual. The hallway had 6 doors, but the blueprint showed only 5 rooms. At the very end stood a narrow, old-looking door with a heavy brass lock. I tried turning the handle, but it wouldn't budge. When I asked Emily about it later, she froze. Her smile disappeared. She said softly, "That room stays locked. Promise me you'll never open it." I laughed nervously. "Why? What's in there?" Her voice trembled as she replied, "Just don't. Please." That night, I woke up around midnight and saw her standing outside the same door, whispering softly as if speaking to someone. When I called her name, she flinched, smiled nervously, and said, "Go back to bed. It's nothing." But I knew it wasn't nothing. A few days later, she started leaving every evening, saying she was visiting her sister. But she seemed anxious every time she left. And when she was gone, I could hear faint noises from that locked room. Once, I heard soft crying. Another night, a gentle humming sound, like a lullaby. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind. But one night, I heard a voice. A small child's voice. "Mommy." It came from behind the locked door. The next weekend, Emily said she'd be staying at her sister's place for 2 nights. Before leaving, she looked at me with worried eyes and said, "Please, don't go near that room." "Promise me," I promised. But the moment she drove away, curiosity won. I searched through her drawer and found a small brass key tied with a red ribbon. It had to be for that door. I stood in front of it, my hand shaking as I held the key. Something inside me screamed not to do it. But I did. The key turned with a quiet click. The door creaked open slowly, releasing a cold rush of air. The room was dim, dusty, and smelled faintly of metal and something else. Inside, I saw a small bed, a rocking chair, and dozens of old photographs pinned to the wall. Every single photo showed Emily, with a little boy, a happy child, with her same bright eyes. At first, the photos looked joyful, birthdays, parks, bedtime stories. But as they went on, the boy's smile began to fade. In the last few, he was lying in a hospital bed. And the final photo was of a small gravestone. I froze. My chest tightened as I read the name. Daniel. Suddenly, the air in the room felt heavy, almost alive. The rocking chair began to move slowly on its own. Creak, creak, creak. Then I heard it. A whisper. Soft, childlike. "Daddy?" I froze, my throat dry. The whisper came again, closer this time. "Daddy, why did you open the door?" The flashlight slipped from my hand. It rolled across the floor and stopped, right at the feet of a small figure standing in the corner. A boy, pale skin, hollow eyes, clutching a broken toy airplane. He looked up at me and whispered, "Mommy said you'd come back." Then he smiled, faintly, and vanished. When Emily came home the next morning, she found me sitting outside the room, trembling, unable to speak. She knelt beside me, tears in her eyes. You opened it, didn't you? I nodded silently. She took a deep breath and said, "Before I met you, I was married once. My son Daniel died in that room. He was playing hide and seek. The door jammed. I couldn't reach him in time." Her voice cracked as she continued, "I kept the room locked because I couldn't bear to face it. But sometimes, I still hear him." She began to cry. I held her close, and for the first time, I understood her silence, her pain. That night, we locked the door again, but around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of that same lullaby drifting through the hallway. I stepped outside our bedroom. The air was cold. The rocking chair in the locked room was moving gently again, and through the silence came a soft whisper. "Good night, Daddy."